All right, we're starting our recording right now. Well, good day wherever you are. We hope you're having a great time. I'm Rick Zanotti, and welcome to eLearnChat. I think this is episode 83 or 4. You know, I really should check before a show. But anyway, it is a beautiful day down here in not so sunny Southern California. And next to me, just a mere several thousand miles away, is Dawn Mahoney. Hey, Dawn, how are you today?
Hi, Rick. How are you today? I'm good. Cold.
Great. I heard you're in the freezer locker over there.
Oh, my goodness. It was 17 when I woke up, but that was warmer than when I went to bed. It was about 8 below when I went to bed last night. 8 below?
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Is that with wind chill or without?
That was temperature.
That was temperature. So let's not even add the minus 25 wind chill, right?
It's not windy right now, so that's the temperature. It was about 17, 18 right now and snowing.
Oh, that's on the that's cold.
Yeah, I don't like this part of winter at all.
The coldest I've ever been is minus 25, and that was pretty cold. You know, and you know what's cold when you take a dog out for a walk and they get stuck to the tree. It's just one of those kind of things. That's how cold it was.
That didn't really happen.
No, I know. I didn't have a dog then, but that's just a good one.
I know you have 2 now, but
however, I did once go to Boston, and I got hit by a wind funnel in the Back Bay area. And my walk back, my contacts literally almost froze on my eyes. It was not fun. It was really painful. It was minus 20 on the walk back.
I've been to Back Bay in January, and it can be kind of ugly there.
It was right around January, actually, and it was cold. It was the wind. It wasn't cold except for the wind, and it just ripped right through it. So
yep, it's damp there, too. So
anyway, today we have a guest. Her name is Sheena Wilson. She is from Victoria, Canada. Lovely Victoria, and lovely Sheena too. Well, everybody's lovely. Anyway, Sheena is an instructional designer. She was a school teacher, I believe, for about 10 years?
Just about
10 years. Well, let me put her on screen. Hi, Sheena. How are you today?
Good morning. It's so great to be here with you guys. So yeah, Rick, I was a teacher for almost 10 years. I spent the first couple of years as a teacher on call, and then found myself teaching secondary level English, which wasn't exactly what I trained for, but it was the work that came my way, and it was exciting and challenging, and I enjoyed it for the first 3 to 4 years, and then as the work started to peter out and new challenges for teachers in BC became more pressing, I found myself looking for other options and decided that maybe the public sector wasn't where I wanted to be trying to invest my time and energy. So that's when I started looking into adult e-learning and training and development.
That's great. And what's interesting about that is that you hit the road with a big passion on instructional design. You really wanted to make some changes in the way you do things. Now you're currently working as a contractor. You're doing so anybody looking for a contractor, I think she's busy, but you can always find Sheena. We'll put her information up on the YouTube video description later on. But you are contracting. You're doing safety training, and there's one other thing you were doing.
So most of my experience throughout grad school and right after grad school has been with safety training, and there's a lot to be done that way. And actually I'm working with a really amazing team that has a lot of ideas to really improve safety training, but with kind of the emphasis on e-learning and looking at restructuring how things are done. In addition to that, I've got a larger project, a very exciting project with a health authority in British Columbia, and they are restructuring a very successful program that they've got for practicing clinicians, and they're trying to find a way to make it accessible to a broader audience of clinicians, so where much of it is delivered face-to-face through residency sessions. They've got me on board to help identify ways to restructure that, maybe come up with more of a blended approach. They do have some materials online, but they're not really maximizing the potential of blended models. So it's a really exciting project because they are eager to move forward, and they really are looking for optimal solutions that are really going to meet the needs of the practicing clinicians that come into the program. So it's very exciting for a new instructional designer.
So what made you go from being a teacher, which is very different, a lot harder in a lot of ways, to an instructional designer?
When I was first studying to be a teacher, I was studying elementary ed, and I remember saying to my mom, this isn't what I want to do. I can really see myself working with adults and teaching adults down the road, even though I really had no idea what that might look like. And after spending some time in secondary, I knew definitely that I did not want to be going to work and facing those battles where, before I could even do my job as a teacher, before I could even be a good educator, I had to take care of so many other issues as far as classroom management and resources, and I found that it limited my ability to put the best into what I was doing. And I honestly believed that, and this comes from not being totally naive, but from knowing people working in IT in Victoria especially, that there was a lot more going on in private sector, that people were investing more in private sector, that folks who were kind of approaching their career with vigor and enthusiasm, there was a lot more potential to be successful in the private sector, and those were all things that I was looking for. So when my partner and I made the decision that I would make that change, even though we weren't sure what it was going to look like, pardon me, I was a very confident teacher who believed that the whole world values and loves teachers, and teachers can do anything. And so I set off looking for a job that was related to adult training and development. And I came across a position that really inspired me, and I went to the first interview, and it went really well. Sometime later, second interview, sometime later, third interview, and the whole while I'm getting really excited and imagining, this new life where I'm doing this new design work, working in training and development, private sector. All things are good, but a little bit naive, the job went to somebody who was simply more qualified than I was. The fact that I got so far along, I believed was a sign from the universe that was something that was worth pursuing, and the fact that I got so excited about the idea of just working on the project that I was applying for was a clear sign to me that was a direction I had to explore further. And that's the research related to that. What are the jobs in this industry? What qualifications are people actually looking for? And that's what led me to my graduate program at Royal Roads. And it was through Royal Roads that I actually discovered instructional design and really started emphasizing my personal research and applied research projects on instructional design. Sorry, I'll let you get a word in edgewise. I tend to get a little excited and I talk and talk and talk about it.
That's like Dawn.
I'm sorry, I had to go on mute for a second. I'm back.
You're back.
I'm back. So I have a question from the audience. What resources have you found useful for moving from pedagogy to adult learning? Because Mary is asking the question. She needs to plead her case about adults learning differently at times. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That was one of the first questions that was asked of me in an interview for that position. At the time, I couldn't tell you what my answer was, but what I remember learning most quickly, both as an adult learner, is that learning has to be really contextually applicable. There has to be immediate value in it, and adults need to see how they're going to apply it. So if you're making me sit here and learn something, you better know why I'm going to do that. I think students coming up younger ages are more inclined to accept the fact that they're at school, they have to receive this information. Maybe some of it might be useful down the road, whereas adults don't have time to do that. They're very specific about, what they're choosing to learn, whether it's by choice or coming from their organization. So I just making it really applicable to them, and not wasting their time.
Was that difficult for you, having been in the classroom and developing teaching methodology where it was a kind of a push environment? Was that a difficult switch for you, especially from a design aspect?
It really wasn't, truthfully, because as I say, I was an adult learner learning about adult learners, and so I appreciated really kind of the logic behind it. So I didn't find it a hard transition. What's interesting is because I do have, a bit more background with that pedagogy and really develop resources to draw my learners in, I bring that into the world of adult learning as well, but it doesn't necessarily guide the development of adult learning as much as, the actual specific educational requirements and the defined learning goals and what could then be expected to demonstrate after accomplishing their learning. I feel it has to be a bit more straightforward.
And I wondered, too, how you went to instructional design and skipped the training in the classroom piece. I'm kind of fascinated to learn more about that.
I do have a little bit of background working with adults in the classroom through work that I've done with the BC Teachers Federation as an adult workshop facilitator for them. So really in-depth training, but enough to get a sense of adults in a classroom. So it does, there's a really big kind of a jump in the middle. I went from secondary school where part of the practice is, a big part of the practice is really putting learners first and trying to meet their goals, or meet their needs, but working with them as individuals and human beings. And when I was in grad school, I worked as an e-learning intern with a company who was developing e-learning for adults. And I was astounded at how much the individualization was actually missing from that. And so it seemed kind of a logical move for me, going from, well, if we're looking so closely and respecting individual, children and adolescents, certainly we try education. Well, why aren't they doing that with adult learners? And then, having people, grown-ups in my life who are expected to complete training and are, doing these computer-based training programs and kind of pulling their hair out. And meanwhile, from my early studies with instructional design and my back education with youngsters, I knew that it could be so much better than that. And so I was inspired right away to start trying to find ways of improving within the organization that I was working with, but then kind of trying to make it bigger than that and trying to help improve it in other organizations.
Good for you. Good for you. I find it all fascinating. Safety training, I'm also fascinated about that because it seems like I get involved in developing and providing safety training. I have several friends and colleagues who do for other organizations, and it seems like that's a market that, from an instructional design standpoint, has a lot of people working on it. So kind of fascinated to know what your spin is and what direction you go with your safety training development.
It's kind of interesting because the design partner that I started with, we're just wrapping up a course that's a very refresher level fall protection safety training course. And the partner that I was working with, while he was also co-developing with me, he was very much the subject matter expert. And we both were somewhat discontent at creating a refresher level course for something that we really see something in-depth and engaging and, involving really quality learning. So our kind of take on it is the organizations that are currently producing refresher level or orientation level e-learning, which is a lot of what we have seen so far with the companies that we're working with, is trying to nurture the relationship and help the organizations see the value in creating more in-depth e-learning, more engaging, richer learning experiences. And I think for us and the companies that we've been working with, they see this as quite right. Well, either we've got our traditional face-to-face, model, or everything e-learning. But we don't do everything e-learning because we hear e-learning isn't good. And then if all they see of an example is kind of that refresher orientation level, which is, valuable in its own right, it's not necessarily going to sell a company who has good quality traditional face-to-face e-learning. So what my partner and I are hoping to do is find ways to create more blended models. So where the information can be delivered in engaging online computer-based training programs, the rich supplementary follow-up steps, bringing in supervisors, having on-the-job competency checklists, so that there's a shared ownership of responsibility between the employer and their computer-based training and the bits that they're doing on their own, less space spent face-to-face with supervisors instead of a trainer, but so that there's that shared responsibility to make sure that learning has taken place, and that when somebody completes fall safety training, then their supervisor follows up and gets them to put on a harness, asks them, what steps are you going to do? Then show me. And they demonstrate that they can do it. Supervisor ticks that off. Every organization knows that that employee is competent. So that's happening very much as far as we've seen with the companies that we're working with, but we really want to help get to that point. Did that make sense? Did I lose Dawn?
Dawn, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is it better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm playing with this headset today, so that could be why.
Sheena asked if that made sense to you.
Yes, it does, absolutely. And what I was asking was, is it your goal to have your clients always look at things from that standpoint because you feel like you're not quite there yet? Or are you where you want to be as far as selling and making the case for a blended approach?
I think at this point we're still really in the early stages, and I certainly don't think that our team really has an agenda, but we're aware of where training could be improved, and we're aware of the capability of using more technology for our clients to do so. And so we don't push them or try to rush them into something that their organization just isn't prepared for yet. But I'm hoping that by developing for them these small e-learning modules and working with them with recommendations for how to bring it into the job more blended, we're just trying to nurture them to get to that point so that they are choosing to make that investment because they do see the value of employees and really do want to make their organization safer.
That's a great idea.
Now, what do you see as one of the biggest differences between teaching high schoolers, which is not exactly the easiest thing in the world, and teaching adults who don't necessarily maybe want to be taught?
It's funny because in so many ways they are really not that different.
I agree. I agree.
And so, to me, I just think of well, first of all, accessibility is a big one for me. I cringe when I see training programs that are entirely text-based or are entirely video-based, and I really like to see kind of a mix of media so that there's some appeal to a broad audience of learners. My background in systematic design, I'd really love to see in-depth learner analysis conducted before any learning program is started.
Here's something. This is very typical. Everybody wants to do analysis, but the reality is, rarely do you ever get the chance. At least in the corporate world, more often than not, it's we need it done. What do we do? Let's just get it done. I think we've done 2 needs analysis over the last 20 years. It just doesn't happen very often, unless it's a very
sometimes it's a phone call with 3 questions, and sometimes it's a good one. I do both.
Right, but it's hard to get a real deep needs analysis going because it just doesn't really happen that much. And I always find that interesting that in schools they teach that as, you got to have your needs analysis first. Yeah, that makes sense. The reality is it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, my stakeholders don't want to invest the funds for the extra resources.
Yeah, the business needs pretty much dictate the need analysis. And in other words, if you notice when training comes to you, it's usually, we've been delaying this for 3 years now, we need it now. And
right.
So it's rush. It's rush. What is it? The wait and hurry up syndrome.
Somebody got hurt. Somebody's getting sued.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what happens in my world.
Yeah, we always laugh. Some of our biggest projects came out of just bad processes in other companies or agencies where they either got sued or they had an injury, and all of a sudden now there's major impact or emphasis on training for about a week. until they get the training ready, and then they move on to something else. But it is sort of interesting. Just when you said deep needs analysis, I was going, oh, that's something we'd like to do here and there, but boy, it's a hard one to do.
Yeah. I really appreciated. I appreciate Michael Allen's approach in background and gathering back information. So as long as you're kind of moving through the project, you don't necessarily have to stop and invest a big piece of time in it. A little bit of time, but making sure that you know who your resources are and the information that you want, and working to extract going through the development process is much realistic. But what it's down to ultimately is, and when training is produced quickly, is it needs to get done and it needs to get out there. So they're not going to worry about whether or not every employee in the company is going to find something interesting or engaging in it. So I'd like to hope that a good program has a little bit of a variety of elements, but
one of the biggest problems with e-learning on the whole is that depending on the type of learning, it's still perceived as very expensive for some companies. I could see where that's true if things change very rapidly, but if you're doing things like safety training or other kinds of training that don't change that often, then e-learning is a really good way to go. You may have to pay a little bit more upfront, but you'll get that back over the years. We've had courses running literally 12 to 13 years already because the principles haven't really changed that much. And so they're actually still, I was actually shocked, but we did something like 30 OSHA courses for a large company here in Southern California, and I was shocked. Those were done in the mid to late 90s, and almost every one of those is still running. Yeah. And we're just going, wow. Because I guess the safety process hasn't changed.
The only thing I'm aware of that's changed in healthcare is how they do CPR is different.
And HIPAA.
Well, HIPAA, yeah. But that's a whole other set of courses for us.
That's right. CPR is a little bit different now. But you're right. A lot of things just don't change that much. So courses can be perennially kept up for a long time, and there you get a big return on investment on stuff like that, because maybe you spend $20,000, $30,000 to build one of those, and you're done. You don't have to build it for quite a few more years. And if there are small changes, you can just add them, do an addendum to the course or make some small modifications, republish, and the course is still good. So
I wanted to insert that Mary says, "Yay for hooray for blended learning." I'm an advocate for that myself. I'm curious as to what relationship or percentage in how you present the option to your clients. Do you say for every hour of instruction, we're hoping you'll spend 20 minutes with each associate, or what's your conversation around selling the benefits and how it actually is executed with respect to blended approach?
Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not the one who has those actual conversations with our clients. I think that there isn't a lot of push in as far as suggestions are being made. Our biggest client right now, projects that are coming our way are being steered by the head of their health and safety department, and so it's just kind of making decisions, making recommendations, and those are going forward as far as developing computer-based training modules, where is actually from myself and my design partner. We're really pushing him to present the idea to the client as simply as possible, because as I mentioned, they're still kind of new and coming into this. So really the push is coming more from the designers on the back end, and the real conversations with clients aren't really happening just yet.
Oh, okay. So you're getting ready to have that conversation or sets of conversations.
Yeah, we're really aware of the fact that if we go in there and start making all kinds of recommendations, we don't want to come off as though we're criticizing the program that they have in place. We want to work with them kind of in baby steps to help improve the system that they have in place, and as they learn to trust us, to maybe heed our recommendations a little bit more, and those baby steps over time, seeing an improvement in the overall program. And the blended piece is going to come into it, where we're asking them to invest in their supervisor time and doing those site safety checklists and competency checks.
And are you doing a lot of evaluation through that process so that you have that information and data available later when you have another client or another situation?
We are. Again, we're in the early stages, so we just don't have that information yet. But any information that we do glean from every project, definitely we'll carry forward and use that to help.
Right. I just wondered what kind of things you're capturing now so that you have it for later.
At this point, Dawn, we really aren't capturing anything.
Okay.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, because if you look at learning management systems and analytics, it is actually amazing how little is actually analyzed. People get the training out there, but rarely do you really analyze the impact of that training throughout the course or lifespan of the training, as well as just to see how effective it was. It doesn't happen that often. A lot of people think...
I was thinking in terms of a year from now, did the number of workplace injuries go down?
Right.
And if that metric were sliced and diced, for instance, fewer back torquing or, whatever their pain points are. Just be curious to know. That's how you know it's effective.
Absolutely. And actually, my newest design partner has a lot of background in health and safety, a lot of background. She's brilliant. So that will be an area where she's focusing on it for sure, because if we can, even 6 months to a year down the road, when organizations can see that there's an improvement, fall protection, for example, is a huge problem in British Columbia. So that would be a great one to show how the training is improving the situation. Yeah. And I think that would be very important to show.
Now, Sheena, what do you find the most difficult as an instructional designer? And then what do you find the easiest?
The most difficult so far has been, honestly, there isn't anything terribly challenging. I think for me, I find it a little bit isolating a lot of the time. I really love the projects where I'm collaborating with a design partner, but there are projects where I'm here in my little office by myself for a big chunk of the time. And it's nice to just have another body to kind of bounce ideas off of. But the internet helps alleviate that to a certain extent. It's also been a challenge to coordinate with clients, just with timing, and when they, like you say, they may be interrupted, but then they're also very busy people. So just coordinating, actually getting projects completed is is a challenge, but nothing that's terribly unexpected. The thing that I find most enjoyable about it, the creative part of it. I really like the idea of collaborating with folks, and I really like the idea of creating meaningful, engaging, and valuable learning. Something that somebody's not going to just sit and click a mouse through or roll their eyes through, but that smile a little bit, maybe they'll have, some critical thought, and that they'll feel as though that their time was well invested and not wasted. So I'm excited about doing anything that kind of works towards that.
Dawn, are there any questions in the chat room at this point?
Mary, Vivid, and I are going back and forth on several aspects, not so much questions. We were kind of commenting on the whole needs analysis piece, and that I sometimes feel like it's easier to do some sort of needs analysis as an internal because I know who the players are and I know what the landscape is and the people involved, but sometimes it's kind of nice to be from the outside looking in because you get purer information. You don't have to have anybody's political agendas right in your face. So that's kind of what we've been talking about. Does that enter into your world at all?
Actually, it resonates so much even just this week because the client that I'm working with, the health authority, they've put a lot of thought into this project for quite some time and brought me on board because really they just need help expediting it and getting it done. And so they've got a lot of background information that they're confident that they know really, really well. Of course, the analysis piece would be in there. I had the opportunity to attend a face-to-face part of the program and was surprised as an observer to notice that the participants weren't maybe as engaged as they could have been, and that the presentation, maybe this portion could have actually been delivered online, so learners could have gone through that. They could have done something differently. So, every day it's really quite obvious
that the blended approach matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the most important things about the blended approach is that you get the advantage of having an e-learning environment, but you also get the experience of having the teacher there.
Yes.
Which right. We tend to downplay, but there's some teachers, and for good and bad reasons. Some teachers really don't have a clue what they're doing, but then when you're in a lot of corporate environments, they do. They actually know the operations or they know the process, whatever you're teaching, and that's kind of invaluable to the e-learning side of it.
Or at the minimum, they're the person that has ownership over reporting the person's performance.
Right.
And so good, bad, or indifferent, because that can go any of those different ways. It does matter that they have an investment. I believe in that with my heart.
Yep.
Absolutely, I agree as well.
That's true.
Do you run into issues, Sheena, with accessibility to computers? Are you designing for mobile and just-in-time modules, or are these pretty much all certification and annual safety requirement type things?
A lot is kind of at compliance, just safety checks annually kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so far.
The OSHA, we have OSHA in the United States, so healthcare and manufacturing typically have to have annual OSHA training done.
With the safety groups, I know that they have to refresh their fall safety. They have got their wellness training. And there's a variety of kind of basic modules that a lot of companies just want their employees to have before they even hit the job site, and then kind of the annual follow-ups to make sure that they're retaining the information. That's a lot of what we've seen so far.
Do we get to see samples of your work, or is there any ability to do that?
At this samples, the first course that I co-developed is currently, I think we've got all of the media figured out as of this week, and so it should be published next week. And I'm hoping to start building a portfolio on my website. I do have a website at SheenaWilson.com. It is development, but kind of as my identity as an instructional designer develops, and as projects come my way, I hope to expand on that and be able to include some really good examples for folks to have a look at. But as on there isn't. Soon.
That's
great. And it was Sheena L, just like your Twitter handle?
Sheena Wilson.
Oh, just Sheena Wilson. Okay.
Yeah.
Did it wrong.
Thank you.
When I first heard your name, I thought Sheena of the Jungle, Queen of the Jungle. So you probably get that a lot.
I'd love it too if you posted out there some of your key points. I think the industry is hungering for more information from people who've made the leap from public education in K through 12 sector into, in quotes, corporate or the private sector with respect to adult learning, and what you find different and what you find the same, or if you do a blog post or something. I think there's a lot of people be interested in that. Those key points you brought up earlier, we'd love to see that published.
And I need a little extra inspiration to blog. I used to blog. I have gotten away from it. So I thank you for that suggestion, and that would also be a great thing for me to ask my web developer to put onto my website for me.
I say I have a blog, but it sits there and doesn't write itself. It's kind of interesting that.
I'm waiting for somebody to write my blog. I have one, but I don't blog consistently either. I think busy people don't have the time to really blog.
Right.
Though yesterday on Shrek Tech, Gina has hired a service now. What was it called? Something Mutt. Blog Mutt. I think it was Blog Mutt, if I'm not wrong. MUTT. And they, for I think $79 a month or something like that, will create 3 or 4 blogs for you. And they're relevant. Is that the
purpose of blogging? I kind of...
Yeah, well, it's really more for business blogs where you want to put out information, but you may not have time to write it. Kind of, if you think about it, most books are ghostwritten. A lot of them are really not written by authors. There's a lot of ghostwriting out there. And so I guess that's a way. I never really thought of it, but that's a way you can do a blog if you have no time. Interesting. Yeah. Obviously, the personality is not going to come out, especially if you're, contentious or trying to spark some controversy. That's not going to come out. But it's interesting. It's an interesting thought. And let's automate.
I'm going to hire a cleaning person before I hire somebody to write my blog. I'm just saying. I'm going to spend that money that way.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know if I would want somebody to write my blog. I would probably not put my name on it if they did. I always wonder about the legal implications of somebody else writing for you and then you get called on it.
Intellectual property,
that could get ugly. Yeah, that could get ugly. But I'm sure that's all covered in the fine print in the contract somewhere in paragraph 822.
For sure. But especially since Mary asked the question, and I've been in situations, especially at ASTD International Conference, that is some of the conversation people have. I get requests on LinkedIn. I get requests on Twitter for how to get into the training world. Either people want to switch from being a recruiter in the purely HR side, or they've been a teacher for a number of years and feel like the private sector is where it's at. I can tell you honestly, public education gets more budget than I do by far, and they have cooler tools and computers. But it is a common set of questions that I get asked a lot. So I think posting information about it from somebody that's done it successfully is a good thing.
Thank
you. I encourage you.
Sounds good. Well, Sheena, it's been a pleasure having you on today. We've been on for about 44 minutes, so I think we're going to wrap up the show today. We're going to have you on again in the future. Talk to us a little bit about what your experiences have been, let's say 6 months down the road, and see, by then you should be jaded and completely, I'm just
like the rest of us.
That's right. You'll be like the rest of us.
They don't listen to me anyway. Why do I bother?
That's right.
This has been such a cool experience for me. I think it's probably months now that I've been tuning in to eLearnChat, and so it was very exciting to be invited, and I really enjoyed the opportunity. So thank you very much, and thank you to Mary and folks in the chat room as well who shared our.
Leva's here. She didn't send any questions in, but that's a great thing. I haven't seen Leva in a few weeks, so it's great to see her out there. Yep. We appreciate you too, Sheena. Thank you so much.
Really, have a great day.
Thanks, Sheena. And for all you guys watching the chat room, we appreciate you being there. And if you're watching the recording, please subscribe. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.